Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for eduStreamTV 2026. We have some really exciting things to go over. I figured if you are new to watching on Crowdcast, I want to take a minute here to just explain how things work on Crowdcast. We know that people are going to be joining for the next couple minutes anyway, so just for you all to know, if you are experiencing any kind of drop frames or anything like that, Crowdcast has actually updated recently, and there's now what's called a smooth mode. On your end of the screen, all you have to do is in the top left-hand corner, you'll see that it says live mode. You can switch that over to smooth mode, and it will allow for some additional buffering to happen if you notice any frame drops. If you're still experiencing an issue after that, what you can do is in the top right-hand side, there is the quality button, and you can actually lower the resolution. This has to be done on your end, so just wanted to let you know. If you are experiencing any buffering issues, that is the best way to resolve those issues. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us for eduStreamTV. This is a 3-day long event where we will be talking about live streaming and recording in all aspects of the educational space. If you are currently watching on YouTube or Facebook, I highly recommend that you head on over to edustreamtv.com. That is where you can sign up for our Crowdcast event. You can engage in our polls. You can ask chat questions in the Q&A section. I have the ability to see the polls as they come up, or questions that come up, the chat. So if you want to get involved in the conversation, that is the best way to do that. And we will also be announcing some prizes at the end of the show on Thursday. The only way for you to get entered into that pool is if you are registered on edustreamtv.com. Otherwise, you can still just watch the and not engage in the conversation on Facebook and YouTube. Okay, so we're going to get into today's show. What is eduStreamTV? eduStreamTV is a 3-day long event. It's going to be today, tomorrow, and Thursday, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern each day. We're going to go about an hour and a half to 2 hours for each session. And the goal for all of this is to teach you guys how to do live streaming and or capturing in your school. How to start and or grow or expand your existing AV programs. We're going to be talking about a lot of real world workflow examples. On the screen here, you can see that we're walking through an Epiphan Pearl system here. We have Epiphan joining us later today, so you'll be able to see that. We're going to talk about different equipments and different budgets for the size and scale of your school to figure out what is best for you. One of my favorite things that we've been talking about with some of our guests is overall how we can get the students involved in the live streaming and recording processes that happen in these events. And then we're also going to hear best practices from educators themselves, integrators who have done these installs in schools, and then also the manufacturers directly and some of the tools that they are implementing into their products to make it easier for educators to focus on just doing the education part and not having to worry about the technology. This is going to be the last reminder that if you are watching on YouTube or Facebook, to make sure to head on over to edustreamtv.com to register for your chance to win one of our great prizes. Again, these will be announced at the end of the show. Speaking of at the end of the show, this is going to be our schedule for the 3 days of events. We're going to do an introduction to the overall themes of the day on each day. Today we have Stuart Stein joining us, and he's going to be talking about his school's program here located on Long Island and how they get students involved to be able to do live streaming. And it's all student run for morning announcements and other weekly shows. I joined Ryan Hayes for a conversation talking about the Epiphan Pearl systems and how those are used in lecture management platforms. And we also talked about some new and exciting features with their EC20 PTZ camera. Next up, I had a great conversation with Cameron Boyce from Bird Dog talking about their PTZ cameras and how they really do have a camera for every single budget and every single workflow, all the way from boardroom meetings with simple, inexpensive PTZ cameras, webcams, all the way up to broadcast cameras that can be put in broadcast studios. And then to end the show today, we're going to be talking with John Henkel from Netgear AV, which is basically like the foundation of all of your AV over IP workflows. Netgear's M4250 and M4350 line of AV switches. We have lots of great guests that are going to be joining us throughout the week. Quick Link with Austin Hinton, PTZ Optics with John Roberts, NPI is one of our local installers with Sam Avalone, Judy Zhu from KiloView, talking about their encoders and decoders. We got Shane Scrimmager from Telestream, David Mitchick from 1210 Production Company, which is another local installer. Andrew Roberts, who is an ambassador to Lumix, educating students on how to use professional cameras. And then ending off our show on Thursday will be Jeremy Morris with VizRT, talking about TriCasters and how both Jeremy and myself used TriCasters when we were in school, and now making a profession out of it, a career out of it. And again, at the end of the day on Thursday, we will be doing a live Q&A. So if you have any questions, make sure to put them in, and we are going to do our best to answer them throughout the show. But we'll do a recap of all the questions that come through on Thursday as well. And that's when we're going to announce our prize winners. So why does all of this matter? Why does AV in schools even matter in the first place? And it's because production is really no longer optional. It is essential. No matter what kind of profession you are going into these days, there is going to be some kind of video content. If you're in a business, you're going to be doing training videos, you're going to be doing marketing videos, you're going to be doing conference meetings through to all of your employees, but also to other businesses that you may be trying to network with. So all of this is real world skills that need to be taught to students so they can go and make careers in doing so. Your audience needs to be reachable from anywhere, whether they're in the room, whether they're at home, whether it's a parent or a grandparent that is watching a sporting event or something like that from home. Another thing is that no matter what, students today are using their cell phones, they're using their laptops or their TV, and they are constantly absorbing content. So when you want to try to get their attention, you can do that by also incorporating some kind of video content for them. Content is king these days. And again, these skills can translate directly to careers. Myself as an example, my high school had a TriCaster Mini SDI. I got to play with that while I was in high school. I decided to go into college to further that, and now I do this for a living. So if it weren't for my school introducing me to that technology, I probably wouldn't have done this. Now, one of the unique things about live streaming in a school scenario is that a school really has all aspects of AV integration, because you are going to be wanting to record or stream out all of the activities that your students are doing. And that can be theatrical performances or band performances in your main auditoriums. That can be graduation ceremonies or any other campus-wide announcements that are happening. Sports broadcasting, especially for high school and college level, maybe even making highlight reels, not just broadcasting the game out to viewers, but making highlight reels for your students to get into college and potentially even get into the major leagues. Morning announcements, again, are really popular, especially in high school and higher education places. But we are starting to see, even in primary school, students getting involved in morning announcements. Lecture capture is, of course, tried and true, being able to record your lesson for your students to then be able to watch and study it later and go over things if they have any questions. And again, school board meetings. We want schools to be transparent with the students and the parents. So if you have the ability for your students and your parents to be able to watch and listen in, or maybe even comment on your school board meetings, that of course is only going to be better for everyone involved. Now, again, these schools are, every education level is using, excuse me, sorry, AV over IP. So this can be in primary schools where you're just introducing the equipment to the students, letting them get their creative juices flowing. We're not really focusing on structure, but more so just giving them a camera and seeing what their creativity can do. You can start to introduce things like morning announcements and things like that to give them roles, but try to keep it lighthearted, and then that way your students will want to continue to do it and explore their creativity. Once you start getting into middle school and high school, that's when you can start adding that structure into it and start broadcasting your, again, theater performances, your sports performances, your games and things like that. And that is when you can start giving the students more clear-cut roles in the production. You know, technical director, camera operator, graphics, things like that. You can actually start to incorporate those. And then especially once you get into higher education, high school, and definitely in college, you really want to be giving the students the ability to use equipment that they're actually going to go use in the real world. You know, high-end production systems, high-end cameras, PTZ cameras, AV over IP, more and more structured workflows, again, giving each student a designated task. So when they do go to either college or they go from college and into the real career world, they are prepared with the skills in mind. So our goal for today is really to talk about where AV in general, in particular AV over IP, fits in a school. We're going to talk about different ways that you can utilize production systems to enhance your learning experiences, as well as doing community outreach. We're going to talk about the different ways that you can do that, whether it's baseband or AV over IP. We're going to talk about how you can get the students involved in these productions. And we're going to be talking about how you can very easily scale your production in today's world. You know, I keep saying AV over IP, and the great thing about AV over IP is once that video is on the network, it's easy to add another camera. It's easy to access that camera. We no longer have to worry about running an HDMI cable or an SDI cable, and how do we do that routing? As long as it's on the network, you're all good. So we're going to talk about that a lot too. And I thought that the best way to start that conversation about how can we get students involved in teaching them how to do things in a real broadcast environment, we wanted to invite Stuart Stein from Belmore Merrick Central High School District, which is located here on Long Island. They have an AV program where they run student-wide announcements, they run weekly shows and things like that, and it's all student-driven. And we thought, how better else to start off our show but by having him join us and talk about that program. So we're going to play that interview for you now.
Hey, this is Jim, and welcome back to eduStreamTV.com. I am very happy to be joined in studio today by a educator who's using the broadcast equipment themselves. Stu Stein from the Belmore Merrick Broadcasting program is joining us here on eduStreamTV to talk about the program that he has built with the school district and to talk about how the students are using the equipment and learning how to develop these skills for their college career, and then, of course, later on in the professional world. So, Stu, thank you very much for joining us.
It's great to be here, Jim.
Let's start by a quick introduction. I tried to build you up as much as I could. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Belmore Merrick?
Sure. About 11 years ago, or 12 years ago, our superintendent had the idea of building a magnet program in each one of our buildings.
Okay.
And Mapham, where I work, is We Got the Broadcasting program. Our assistant principal at the time, Marie Netto, she was the visionary behind the program. They went out, they visited a handful of schools that had similar programs. And over the course of the next year, they built, working with B&H, they built a studio in an old home economics room.
Okay.
here we are 11 years later. We had the beginning, the nuts and bolts of the equipment. We just needed to create the content. And that's where I came in, and my colleagues Matt Russell and Lisa Kalish, three of us worked together, teaching the students how to use, our early classes, get their hands on the equipment. As freshmen, we put $1,000 cameras, $2,000 cameras in their hands, teach them how to use it. And then sophomore, junior year, we teach them how to use that equipment to tell stories. And senior year, it's pretty exciting. Our seniors, I call it now, it's a production lab. Okay. Our 17 seniors, they produce 5 weekly shows, a weekly live sporting event or a campus event, multi-camera shoots. So these kids go from knowing nothing about how cameras work to, by the time they graduate, they can run a multi-camera shoot. They go on to some of the best broadcasting programs in the country, where they walk in on day one and they're not looked at as students or interns. They're looked at as producers.
That's great. And I'm sure over the past 12 years, this program has grown quite a bit. And I know in the local area here in Long Island, New York, that there are a lot of schools looking to make similar types of investments. There are classrooms and other areas in the school available to them. But quite honestly, there's also a lot of funds available to STEM and some of these different practices where this is becoming more and more important. I'd imagine you have schools reaching out to say, hey, what did you do and how do we do it too, right?
Yeah, the big thing, I think, about 10, 12 years ago, new tech back then, VizRT now, the TriCaster and the advent of NDI brought the price point to get into this so far down at the same time when schools were looking to create more hands-on, real-world opportunities for kids. It became a no-brainer. And we're part of an organization called BASH, which exists now. It's Long Island and Westchester and New York City. Schools are turning clubs into classes, classes into programs. People do reach out. They come visit us in our studio. Other schools in the BASH network have schools reaching out. 12 years ago, there were 0 resources. Yep. Yeah. I went on the internet. I'm looking for how do you teach broadcasting.
Sure.
My background, I was a film major. 35 years ago. We stumbled into things like the Student Television Network, which is a great national organization that brings together schools, and the world of student and scholastic broadcasting is just growing by leaps and bounds.
Absolutely, and that's one of our goals here on eduStreamTV, is to provide some of those resources for schools across the country who do want to get started in that. Throughout the course of this week, we're talking with vendors like VizRT New Tech, other vendors like Panasonic, Sony, all across our product line. We're talking to system integrators and installers who are working with the school districts, and of course, with educators like yourself who are running programs like the Belmont Merrick Broadcasting Program and some of those other stuff. Now, your program is very student-centric, student-driven, and your students are actually broadcasting different content every single week, right?
Yeah, that was the challenge for us. We walked in and we had this great studio, and we had no content. And so the mantra became, don't wait until you're ready, otherwise you never will be.
100% agree with that, yes.
And I mean, if you go back through our YouTube page, you will find the very first ever B&B morning announcements. It's 4 kids sitting in front of a black screen, basically passing a microphone back and forth.
Right.
And what we did is, we got up to speed as quickly as possible, the faculty, and learned the ins and outs of the TriCaster. And we brought our kids, we had them come in to create a weekly newscast, graphics, using the production in the control room. The kids wrote the scripts, the kids created the graphics, the kids did the research. And now we had this weekly show, which is now nationally recognized by the Student Television Network. It's been now running for 10 years. We're well over into the hundreds of episodes. And that then spun out into, okay, we have this great studio. We need to get more content on the air. We have this, all this equipment. We shouldn't just be using it once a week. A big part of scholastic broadcasting is this idea of digital storytelling. That when you and I went to school, they taught us if you learn how to write, you'll be a good communicator. And if you learn how to read, if you can read and write, you can be successful in this world. Well, think about it. Nobody today reads. Nobody listens to somebody speak, right? They all pull out their phones and they're scrolling. They're looking for videos. They're looking for content. Those are digital stories.
Yes.
And so we at B&B teach our kids to create digital stories, digital storytelling, short 2 to 3 minute news packages, short features, short 3 minute just content. And if we're going to create this content, we needed a place to put it. So what we did is we created a show called Midweek Update, where every week we were showing 2 and 3 of the feature digital stories that our kids were creating. That then led to a show that we just launched this year called The Beat, where we realized we needed to get out of our school and get into our community. And so by getting out into the community, we were creating these live hits and live reports from around Belmore, from around Merrick, where our kids were out doing the news. The same thing you would turn on NBC or CBS, we were doing the same thing. I think the pinnacle of what we do is our weekly live sports or live school event. 6 camera shoot, instant replay, graphics, sportscasters. Our kids start off by doing the research. That's the thing. You do a sporting event. A lot of kids think you just turn the camera on and you sit behind the mic and you talk and that's the end of it. Our sporting events, we start 2 weeks out. We interview both coaches. We create the graphics pack based on those interviews so that every kid is a lower third, that we're able to feed in different graphics, a score bug throughout. Our control room, we've got a technical director, we got a director of photography, we've got someone running the replay. And if you walk into our control room, you wouldn't know that you're not in the truck outside of an NHL event. It's quiet. Yeah, and they're listening to the producer. And the best part is me and Elisa and Matt, the other teachers. We're literally sitting at unless we're solving a technical problem, we're literally sitting at our desks and our kids are running the show.
And what I love hearing about it is it sounds like you're really empowering a lot of different students to handle different aspects between the sports production, the news collection, researching, building, interviewing. All of these separate skills all go into producing the content. The content and the delivery is really the end. It's everything that's leading up to that are these life skills that you're empowering them with.
100%. If you can produce a student television show, you can produce anything in life, because production is production.
Yep.
Whether you're producing a birthday party for a kid, you're producing a fine meal, or you're producing TV. And that's the thing, when I taught social studies for many years.
Okay.
And when you teach history, yeah, I loved history and I loved how we got here to there to the next thing, but you don't see the kids making the connections. They walk out of class and they're like, well, that was interesting. Maybe. But here...
That's a really good class.
Here you literally see them going from camera op, or from camera assistant to camera op to floor producer to, up into the control room, where they work from the outside of the control room towards that middle where the technical director pushing all the buttons, to the back row where they're producing. You watch these kids go from freshmen where they don't know anything to sophomores where by the end of sophomore year, they're producing their own live hits, they're producing their own basic digital stories, to junior year where our kids are producing award-winning digital stories.
That's great.
And then they're taking on an active role on the front seats of the control room during our live shoots. To senior year, I mean, we did this past weekend. We were at school on Saturday. Our kids are shooting a movie. And me and Matt Russell, one of the other teachers, we were there really as technical advisors. The first scene, he was the DP, and I modeled what it's like to be the first assistant director. And by the time they got to the fourth, Matt had gone home, and I was just sitting there looking on the internet. We give these kids the opportunities, and they jump in because you and I, again, we're digital immigrants.
Yes.
We didn't grow up with this.
Right.
They grew up with it. They pick it up quickly, and they're able to see possibilities that.
And what I like is we talked a lot about the content and producing that content. That's a major, major part of what they have to learn. The other part, of course, is the product and the technology itself. So this is where building the studio and giving them the tools in order to produce the story, that's where a lot of your time and investment must have gone over the years, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was a film major 35, 40 years ago, I learned how to edit tape, it was, never mind tape, I was editing film, and you needed scissors and tape. And so, walking in here, learning how to use the TriCaster, learning the most recent, at that point, version of Adobe, which was 21, 19, wherever it was, 17.
Yeah.
Yeah, the learning curve was steep, and even anyone getting into this right now, you're like my first year running building the program was 400 hours outside of the classroom just learning the technology.
Wow.
But that investment has paid off in spades because I was able to turnkey things to the kids who were then in turn able to turnkey it to others. One of my favorite things about our program is we follow a model called I do, we do, you do. I'm going to do something, then we're going to do it together, and then you're going to become the expert and you're going to do it on your own.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter who the I is. Kids have learned things from me. I've learned things from my colleagues. My colleagues have learned things from me. We've learned things from our students. If you turn on anything on BMB, on Belmar Broadcasting, anytime a lower third pops up, that was created in After Effects by a kid who graduated, I think 3 years ago. He's at NYU now. We still use his lower third because he not only created it, but he left instructions for everyone to use it after. And that I do, we do, you do model, it works for us.
Absolutely. And it's cyclical. As you mentioned, it doesn't matter where the eye starts, it all feeds into itself with different parts of that equipment along the way. I know we talked a lot about the VizRT TriCaster. I imagine you're using both the SDI input-output capabilities, but you're also using some network connectivity with NDI tools.
NDI is an absolute game changer in the high school environment. That people keep encouraging us to use the, I'm sorry, I forget the name of it, not Bird Dog. When you live in a high school, the entire high school is connected. Right. And so you can take that spark, you can take the NDI encoder, plug it in literally anywhere in the district, and that signal gets back to the TriCaster.
Absolutely.
And so that has allowed us to do sporting events from other buildings. It's allowed us to do sporting events from to cover events in other places around campus. Our morning announcements program, last year, a kid wanted to do a promposal live on the morning announcements. So we just ran a spark over to the classroom where the girl he was promposing to.
There we go.
And next thing you know, live on the morning announcements from, 50 feet away from our studio, we were, it gives you that capability.
That's a brave soul in high school. I don't know if I would have had the courage to do that.
I think you knew the answer ahead of time.
I would imagine so. I think the great thing about that is you were searching for the products. The answer really is there's just so many of them. When we get into the NDI production workflows, we've always had great luck with the Netgear AV switches. Bird Dog, KillerView made all of these NDI workflow tools that allow you to plug these cameras in. And as you mentioned, every source is now available everywhere on the network and become delivery with the NDI decode functions as well.
On top of that, you can also add in the PTT capability.
Yep.
That we're able to do shoots. We're lucky. We have 85 kids in our program. But we can't always get kids to all of the shoots, and we can't always have the different capabilities. So because of that, we take a PTZ camera, we plug it in one spot, we take another PTZ and plug it into the other place. Then we just need someone in the control room, operating room.
Great. Awesome. And then what I like too is where B&B has really grown is you've gotten to the point where you've spread this out all across New York with the BASH Awards. Can you tell us a little bit about these?
Yeah. BASH it's a great... BASH is teachers helping teachers.
Okay.
And about 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago, David Seinfeld, who was the former assistant superintendent in Belmar Merrick, he was working at LAU Post. He got together a group of people to have a conference on Election Day about student broadcasting. And at the same time, David Gamberg, who is the superintendent out in, he was out in Southold.
Okay.
He got together 8, 9 schools on the East End to have an award ceremony, and they were celebrating student broadcast. It was called the Broadcast Awards for Senior High. And what eventually happened is these two groups kind of merged. The Election Day group and BASH merged, and now what we have is that Election Day group was spending a lot of time working on staff development, working on trying to share resources, share ideas. Combining the BASH Awards with the people that were trying to improve our craft has led to a mailing list of, I think, close to 200 schools. I think BASH now has 70 paid members. We have 2 events, one in Westchester at the Jacob Burns Film Center,
okay,
and the other at Hofstra. We are in our, I want to say, 6th, 7th year at the BASH Awards on Long Island. We get Over 1,000 people attend the Bash Awards, kids from 60 schools submitting work to be celebrated, but at the same time, we have breakout sessions where the kids are learning on site and they're able to interact and network and never mind to take the teachers out of the equation, they're talking to each other because they're going to end up at Ithaca or at Syracuse or at Pitt, and they're going to say, hey, weren't you at Bash? And so
Absolutely.
They're learning from each other, they're interacting with each other, they're celebrating each other. And like I said, we over 1,000 kids, 1,000 students all across Long Island. This year up in Westchester, I don't know the exact number of how many people are going to be there, but if Westchester grows the same way Long Island did, there'll be over 1,000 any day now.
I've had the pleasure of going to the Bash Awards in the past, and it is absolutely amazing to see a college campus with thousands of high school students, and not one of them are afraid to walk up to a TriCaster and press a button. Where this production equipment will intimidate a lot of people, even those with some basic knowledge of the production gear. These kids are walking up to it. What does this do? What does that do? Just genuine curiosity and passion that you know if they continue to go down this vocation and that they're being introduced to something that really excites them. And that's a great thing.
Yeah, it's a skill that they will use the rest of their lives, whether they're in this field or not. Yeah, that confidence, without a doubt. Beyond that, just one last thing on Bash. What's interesting about Bash is it's a place for teachers to ask questions of other teachers, and or 100% volunteers. And what's I think is interesting is our board of people that sort of organize the event. Some of the people on the board started off just a few years ago as newbies, and the idea is that everyone we're take that same I do, we do, you do. It doesn't matter where the I comes from. Everybody's got a question, and by creating this network of teachers and students, we're able to help each other find answers, and again, to celebrate the amazing work that these kids are doing.
And the next event on Long Island is coming up in just a few weeks.
Yep.
On May 21st at House Street University here on Long Island, the Bash Awards. If you are in the tri-state area, it's worth the trip just to go out there and see what these guys are doing. Broadfield is proud to be a sponsor of that, also a sponsor of eduStreamTV here. Stu, thank you so much for joining us and sharing some of this great information.
It's a pleasure to be here, Jim. Thanks.
For our audience who want to learn more about Belmore Merrick Broadcasting, I imagine they can go to the website, YouTube channels, all sorts of great stuff available online. Right?
We've got a Weebly page. If you go to Google and you just search Belmore Merrick Broadcasting, you will find us. That is for sure. We are a broadcasting empire in the world of
and we will be sure to share that here as well. Thank you for joining us.
Appreciate it.
Huge thank you to Stu for joining us to talk about the Belmore Merrick Central High School District and what they're doing with their AV program. I'm really glad to see that some questions have already started coming into the chat. I see that Brian asked a great question. What's the best practice portable live streaming device and services to use in remote locations where there is no direct internet connection? That is a fantastic question. The good news is there are actually several different choices on the market that are available. I would say that the top 3 current on the market would be LiveView, Teradek, and KiloView. All 3 of these manufacturers offer live streaming solutions with cellular bonding. One of the things that I will point you to is tomorrow when we have our interview with Judy from KiloView, we will actually be talking about the P3 and the P3 Mini, which is KiloView's cellular bonded service. So I highly recommend that you guys stay tuned and check that out. I had a great conversation with Judy. The other thing that I'll say is if you are looking for more specific information on any of those products, absolutely feel free to give us a call here at eduStreamTV and we can kind of point you in the right direction. We also have a whole network of local dealers and integrators throughout the whole country that can also get you some more information if you want a more hands-on approach. The other thing that I'm starting to see is that people are saying that they have varying levels of experience with AV over IP, whether it's NDI or Dante. We here at eduStreamTV are big fans of NDI. That is going to be a recurring theme that you see us talking about throughout the whole event, which is AV over IP. NDI, we'll be talking a lot about it with Netgear with our segment later today. Another thing that I wanted to say is we actually recorded almost an hour-long segment with Netgear talking about how you can actually use their switches with NDI and Dante and SMPTE and all of these other AV over IP protocols together. And unfortunately, that's a little bit long. So that is actually going to be in our full playlist at the end of the event. So for those that are looking to get more information on NDI and Dante working together, I highly recommend checking that out. The last thing that I'll leave you with before we move on to our next segment is that PTZ Optics, who is another one of the manufacturers that we had join us, they will be on our show tomorrow. And we actually talked about their PTZ Optics Link series of PTZ cameras, which are Dante AVH certified AV over IP PTZ cameras. So you can learn a little bit more about their solutions tomorrow as well. Now, the next segment that we are going to play is an interview that I did with Ryan Haynes from Epiphan, and we talked about their Epiphan Pearl systems and their EC20 brand new PTZ camera. So we're going to play that for you now. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another segment of eduStreamTV, where we're just talking about everything that has to do with live streaming and recording in educational spaces. I am super excited to be joined by Ryan from Epiphan to talk about the Epiphan Pearl systems and their new camera and the integrations that they have with LCMs and other things like that. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. Can you do us a quick favor, introduce yourself, Epiphan, and why you're so trusted?
Yeah. So my name is Ryan. I work in Epiphan's customer success team. I'm the manager of that team. And Epiphan is known as being a reliable lecture capture appliance for flexible streaming, its open ecosystem, and for enabling automated spaces. And we're trusted by over 700 universities worldwide. And education market is really one of our biggest segments for our business. So we know it well, and we've been in the space for quite some time now.
That is great. And like you said, the whole thing with Epiphan is just being able to have these automated spaces, plugging your audio and or video devices into a Pearl system, and the Pearl just makes everything easy from there. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. But pretty much just like no matter what the use case is, Epiphan devices kind of give you a practical path from capture to delivery with open ecosystem integrations. And it can be built from scratch, or it can be made to work really well with already existing infrastructure. So we try to make our devices play nice with everything, and so you'll hear us say that a fair bit, that we enable our devices to slot in, but also to start from the ground up with us. And you can build a whole use case around Pearl. But then again, it's not in a closed environment if that's the case, because we have a lot of flexibility, which we'll talk about a little bit later too.
Yeah, I think, like you said, plays nice with everything really does seem to be the tagline for Epiphan in general, whether it's HDMI, SDI, NDI, SRT, Dante, XLR, you really do play nice with everything. And you make everything really easy. Can you talk about some of those automation workflows?
Yeah, so I mean, the Epiphan systems are designed for everyday users, but also for the administrators and the IT team using it. So we try to make a device that is not only easy to use from the front, but also within the web UI and with our other tools. So it gives the AV and IT teams what they need to support those devices remotely, but also on site. And really the philosophy around that is just giving the right amount of control and visibility for the teams that need it behind the scenes.
No, absolutely. Now, you guys really do have a Epiphan Perl system for every kind of workflow, and we're going to talk about
Yeah.
each one of these. But
Yeah.
before we start getting into the specifics between the Nano, the Mini, the Nexus, and the Pearl 2, can you explain what the Pearl is overall?
Yeah. Yeah, so at the core of our business is the Pearl device. It is a streamer recorder encoder, but it can also do things like switching and scaling, as well as layout composition creation. So they're basically all-in-one devices, but our stack enables you to choose the right device for your space. So we don't just try to cram everything into one box. We have multiple boxes that scale depending on the amount of video sources you have coming in, or maybe it's the type of video sources you have coming in. So if we go left to right, Pearl Nano is a 4K or 1080p encoder, single channel. So, maybe downstream from a switch or from a switcher or something like that. And then as we go up, we're basically looking at adding more video sources. So Pearl Mini is good for on-device control, where you want the control on the device itself rather than externally. And then the Pearl Nexus is something that is installed permanently. And both the devices are for 3-channel integrations. And what I mean by channel is just how many recordings you need done simultaneously. And we get up to Pearl 2, we're looking at 6, so 6 encoded channels. So basically, when you need more than 3, you're into a Pearl 2, which is really the flagship product. You can record 6 cameras in auditorium all simultaneously, and then upload those to your CMS platform, wherever else that content needs to be.
Now, that's great. So let's start off by talking about the Pearl Nexus, which you said is the rack mountable Pearl. Can you tell us about some of the high level features of the Pearl Nexus? And then we'll get into like a workflow example.
Yeah, so Pearl Nexus is a full HD, so 1080p 30 encoder. That would be 3 at maximum 1080p 30 recordings or at the same time. Now we typically see, between 2 and 3 at the same time. So that might mean 2 HDMI sources and an NDI source, or maybe 2 NDIs running into the system, and then either having those in isolation. So let's think of like maybe a camera on a chalkboard, a camera on a presenter, and then maybe an HDMI ran into the device from a capture computer getting slides that's in the environment. And then all that gets together and is uploaded to Panopto or Kaltura, OpenCast, Yuja, soon to be Echo 360. So it's made to integrate and be controlled by something else. That's where the Nexus thrives. It's a headless unit, goes in the rack, set it up, and then you pretty much forget about it. It does its job, and it does it well.
Now, I know you kind of already went through a workflow example, but let's bring
Yeah.
this slide up full screen, and then you can kind of
Yeah.
walk through the different ways that you can get audio and video feeds into the Pearl Nexus and what you can do with the output end.
Yeah. So as you see in the slide there, we have SDI, HDMI, as well as you see an example of a network source. We support SRT, NDI-HX, RTSP, HDMI, SDI, USB audio and video. And so you can bring your video sources into the Pearl Nexus in any one of those ways, and it can be a mix of those ways as well. It doesn't need to be just one or the other. And that's for video, but audio can be part of that video chain as well. It doesn't need to be from like an analog audio or microphone like you see in the middle of the signal diagram here. You can connect XLR or you can connect a 3.5 millimeter or RCA to Pearl Nexus, in addition to USB. So quite commonly we'll see like a QSYS like MV32 and MV16 outputting USB audio directly to a Pearl Nexus. And then that's the DSP for the digital signal processor for the environment. And then all that is recorded together and then either uploaded to the CDN or streamed at the same time. But we also have the local copies on the device. And so, let's say that your network connection goes down or something like that during your events. Well, we're going to record all those. And then when we get internet back, we'll upload those at the end of the day. So you can always, this is a staple for all Pearl devices. You can always rely on the reliability to when things do go wrong in the environment, they're still going to be there for you and help you out through the way.
That is fantastic. Like we said at the top of the show, the Epiphan really just makes it easy, and then you have backups in case of something going wrong, like that
Yeah.
record capability, like bringing in your audio through a different method or something like that. Now let's talk a little bit about the Pearl Mini. Now the Pearl Mini is similar to the Pearl Nexus, but you add this nice touchscreen display to it. Can you tell us
Yes.
about the Pearl Mini?
Yeah, so the Pearl Mini is very similar to the Pearl Nexus. This is a device that's meant for those shared spaces where people are coming up and they're actually touching this device. They're not coming up and touching some like panel or just waiting for a recording to start. They could still work in those use cases, but mainly they're used where you would want a user coming in interacting with the display on the Pearl Mini itself. As far as features go, it's identical to the Pearl Nexus, so that's 3 channels, 3 inputs, the same type of video and audio sources compatibility as well. The main difference here is that that touch screen on the front of the device for that onboard control.
Exactly. And so that means that the workflow example is going to be very similar to the Nexus.
Yes.
So we had it up full screen for a few seconds there. I don't think we need to do a super deep dive into this. Let's move on to the Pearl Nano. Now, the Pearl Nano is a little bit smaller, single channel encoder, also 4K capable. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Pearl Nano?
Yeah, so the Pearl Nano, and it's also compatible with CMS platforms, so it can link to any one that we support: Culture, OpenCast, Yuja, Panopto, and soon to be Echo 360. But it is a single channel encoder. There's no switching on the device either. So typically, the Pearl Nano would be downstream from a switcher or used for simple type workflows. Or maybe you're just running in a camera and a computer, and you're doing like a picture-in-picture, or maybe just a computer screen with room audio. That's also a possibility with Nano. So the way you can see it is that this is your simple 1 or 2 video encoder that doesn't do any switching or anything like that. It's kind of set it and forget it. There is some onboard controls there on the front as well for ease of use. But this is that little guy that you put into a room where you only have 1 or 2 sources for sure.
And that's great. Some classrooms you don't need to have, 3 cameras and all of that stuff. Sometimes you just need a camera pointed at the teacher, maybe something like the EC20. We'll get into them a little bit later into the show. EC20 with that super good auto tracking on it, and it just follows the professor or the teacher at the front of the room, and you, like you said, you get that room audio, so everybody knows what's going on and can watch from home or watch the recording later to study.
Yeah, 100%. And where we've seen the Nano thrive too is where, like, let's say you have a projector in the environment but you want to run, that signal into the Pearl Nano to record it first. It has an HDMI pass-through, so you can run an HDMI cable inside of it, and then route the pass-through right out, and then you basically have 0 latency out of the device over to like a screen inside the room. So it's a nice it serves some nice use cases for more simple workflows for sure.
Yeah, and we didn't really talk about that with the Pearl Nexus and the Pearl Mini, that you do have the HDMI output, which could be used for in room display, but it could also be used as something like a monitor, like above the camera that we have here. We have a confidence monitor, so I know exactly when you're up, when I'm up, et cetera, et cetera. That information is invaluable to anybody that is on a stream, whether they're an educator or not.
Yeah, 100%. We there's a university, MTSU, which we have a case study with. They use a Pearl Mini, and they take the HDMI out and run it into our AVIO capture card, and then move the USB into a computer. And so they can route all their classrooms into a Zoom or Teams meeting as well at the same time as being integrated with their CMS platform. And so you could use the HDMI output to convert over to USB at the capture card, and then bring that into a conferencing situation.
That is great to hear. Now let's step up to the Pearl 2, which is basically the flagship encoder, switcher, recorder from Epiphan. So can you tell us a little bit about the Pearl 2?
Yeah, the Pearl 2 is just a step up from the Pearl Mini and Pearl Nexus at this rate. So we're looking at double the capabilities. 6 channels, that means, 6 video sources running into it. That could be 6 NDI-HX, it could be 6 SRT, it could be, HDMI, a mix of those things, just like the other devices. And then you can record all those at the same time. 2 HDMI outputs on the Pearl, 2 here. So that means that you could actually route 1 HDMI to that capture card into, conference situation, and then also the other one could be routed out to, a display in the room or something else like that.
Yeah, and I think that because there are more inputs and ways that you can, add camera feeds or just video feeds in general, I think it is worth bringing this slide up again and kind of just walking us through. 6 inputs is a lot of inputs for a production.
It's a lot.
Being able to do that with the Pearl 2 is great.
Yeah, and no, we see this used with 6, UX labs and things like that. Excuse me. They'll have cameras in different positions, route them all into Pearl 2, record all of them in isolation, and then send those up where they need to be. Another interesting use case is a Pearl 2 with a 4K add-on, or with 4K. So what you could do is you could have a 4K camera in the room. I know of a university that has a 4K camera at the back, shot on a massive blackboard. And because we support cropping within the layouts and we can support multiple crops of the same video source in different channels, though what they do is they actually take a 4K video source, and in their isolated channels, they have different crops of different sections of the blackboard within that. And so they can use one 4K camera to essentially create what looks like 4 different cameras, and then crop that out in the Pearl 2, and then have it available to their students, while minimalizing the amount of cameras they have in that particular room.
That is great to hear. I didn't know that the Pearl had that cropping feature, so that is awesome and a perfect example of a use case of it. Now, we've been talking about being able to connect these to CDNs and LectureCast capture systems. Can you talk a little bit about that side of the Pearls?
Absolutely. So from the control side of things, we have an open ecosystem, and we have our REST API, which is very robust, and we have pre-built modules for very popular control systems out there, like QSys, Crestron, Extron, Stream Deck. I know that there's been people who made them for AMX. People have done their own custom integrations. And so from the control side inside the room, essentially we enable drag and drop type of integrations, where if you load up the QSys module, you can build out your user interface by just dragging in things from the module without needing to write any Lua code or anything like that. But if you want to go further, we have a REST API, which is available right inside our web UI for testing, which is really great for developers. It shows you all the syntax and everything like that right on the device, without needing to go to find a PDF somewhere, which is really nice.
Now, that is great to hear. And speaking of different ways that you can control the Epiphan Pro systems, can you tell us a little bit about Epiphan Edge and how that works?
Yeah, and one thing I didn't touch on from the last slide was just the CMS integrations. If we're talking about... Oh, no worries at all. So the CMS integrations, Panopto, Kaltura, OpenCast, Echo 360 coming up, Yuja, these are all systems that we've been working with for a long time, especially Panopto. And it just enables complete automation of lecture capture and of video and audio streaming and everything like that. And with our API built into it, we support event controls on those panels you might already have. So enabling you to really customize the environment that these devices are working within. And so you can make it work with a lot of your existing infrastructure, rather than needing to, redesign around a closed room. Pearl kind of opens that up, where you can pop it in. There's a good chance it's going to work with that environment.
That is great. And I apologize for skipping over that, but I'm just so excited to talk about Edge.
Nice.
Can you tell us a little bit about how Epiphan Edge plays into controlling the Pearl systems?
100%. So Edge is, it basically answers the question of like, how do you scale all these things? You think of universities that have 300, 400 Pearl devices, and you wonder, like, how do they manage all these things at one time? That's a lot of rooms. That's a lot of devices to check in on. What Epiphan Edge allows you to do is allows you to pair those devices into a single platform and monitor and manage those all from what I call a single pane of glass. So one monitor.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see all your devices in one place. You can get real-time alerting. You can do time-saving batch actions like applying firmware across your entire fleet rather than going with, doing it one by one. You click a couple buttons and then you press update firmware. When the firmware is available, it downloads it from our servers and then puts it right onto the device without you needing to worry about going room to room, which is really a massive, massive time saver. And when we're looking at CMS integrations, we have a schedule feature within Epiphan Edge, which allows you to see all of your scheduled events. So if you're integrated with the CMS and you've scheduled out your events, you'll see them all there for each device in your team, and you can narrow into one device, or you can see a calendar view of every event on every device from one place. So in many cases, once you've scheduled your events, there's really no need to go outside of Epiphan Edge. We supply everything there for the monitoring and confidence of our devices and your integrations.
I think that's great. Some people might be thinking that these are only going to be used in 1 or 2 classrooms, but if you're a college campus or even a K through 12 school, you might have 50 rooms in each one of these schools, in each building. And
Yep.
I bet it's probably a IT guy's nightmare to want to think about, how do I update all of these? But Epiphan has a solution for that. You can just connect them all to Edge and you can update them all at the same time. You can schedule
100%.
them all from one place. So that, going back to making things easy for educators, Epiphan is really taking the lead in that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you guys recently put out a camera, the EC20, and
Yes.
this is a great camera. Can you tell us a quick overview of what the EC20 is, and then we'll get into some specific features that I think are only available on the EC20.
Yep, that's right. I mean, as you saw in the last slide, and we're going to get into it a little bit further in the next slide, but it is a camera that is built for education. It is built for this, and it's not just because we have some marketing on it. We have some very exciting features, which we're going to talk about in the next slide, which is the first of its kind in this market for a camera. But generally, we're looking at these features. 4K 60 has a field of view of 60 degrees, 20 times optical zoom, which is going to be good for most cases out there in auditoriums and things like that. It does have AI tracking, presenter, and zone tracking with some different settings you can change within there, like disabling if it can go up and down, or disabling zoom, and so you can get a little more accurate track from the camera for sure.
Absolutely. And we don't have enough time to play the demo right now, but I'm going to encourage our viewers to head on over to Epiphan's website. You guys did a really good video with George Burchell showing off that AI tracking and the zone tracking and resetting to position 0 when somebody goes off the frame completely. Really good video. Highly recommend our viewers go check that out. Some really exciting news to talk about on this slide. So I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'm going to give this one all to you.
Yeah, so this is truly the first direct Panopto camera. So we have to think about what that means. Well, it means that the camera can record, stream, and upload directly to Panopto. No PC required, no additional hardware, supports schedule of recordings, webcasts, and all those automatic uploads, plus Dante audio. So you can bring a Dante audio source directly into the camera, so you can power the whole thing and run your whole environment with one cable. And this is actually how I'm doing this right now. The EC20 is what's looking at me right now. This microphone is Dante, and I'm running Dante into the camera and then running HDMI out of it just into my computer. So it's kind of we eat our own dog food, I guess you could say, here at Epiphan. And I'm running this live essentially, and so this is the first camera to be able to integrate with Panopto directly, and so you don't need a computer. You have everything right here in one device.
No, that is exactly right, and this looks like it's a scenario where using that brand new feature would work well. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So there's two use cases or two scenarios that we think are pretty exciting. And the first is to enable recording and streaming and capture within spaces that were maybe the barriers were a little bit too high. So like breakout rooms, seminar rooms, and collaborative spaces where maybe it didn't make sense logistically or economically to put a whole lecture capture system in that room. Well, now you can run one Ethernet cable and connect it to the camera and pair that camera to the Panopto, and then you have your lecture capture right inside that room. And so then you can start to bring, lecture capture and the capture in general to rooms that are, previously out of reach, and then just enabling, better workflows and more convenience without needing to install a bunch of devices. Just the one device, and using Dante, you just your Dante microphones wherever that may be, which could just be something on a person like it's on me.
That is fantastic. And the second scenario is to upgrade your Panopto experience. Can you tell about that?
Yeah, exactly. So Panopto supports basically linking two devices together. So let's say you had a computer inside a existing room and it's capturing slides or something like that. Well, you could just put an EC20 in that room, and if you're running Dante audio, you could run the audio into the camera, and then in Panopto you can select that computer plus the EC20. And then whatever you schedule on that computer, is the EC20 is going to be part of that event and be seen as the second channel within it. And it could also be used to update aging equipment too. Maybe there's a aging lecture capture system or some deprecated lecture capture system that is in this environment, and you just need to replace that. Well, the EC20 could also be a component to replacing that as well, without needing to replace like the Windows capture system in that environment either. So to the teachers, not really much changes. The ones that are using the room, it's just that the device is actually doing the capturing is what's changing, which just looks like a regular camera at the back of the room.
That's great. The last time we had you on a show, we kept saying that we want educators to teach. We don't want educators to have to worry about, oh, is my camera recording? Is this doing that? Is that doing this? And Epiphan just checks off all of those boxes. You guys let the teachers teach, and you just have the camera or the Pearl system do all of the automation. So they just have to show up and start giving their lesson. Now, you kept mentioning one cable delivers everything. Let's talk about that a little bit, because you can get power, you can get video, you can get control all through a single Ethernet cable, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's a PoE camera, so we support Dante. So that means you can just run one Ethernet cable from a PoE switch and run that into the camera, and then everything you need for video, audio, scheduling, communication with the camera, whether that's API, it's all there in one cable. So you don't need to run other things, and so it makes integrating the camera a whole lot simpler. Especially in environments where you do want a Panopto lecture capture recording, because it's just right on the device. No other device is needed.
It couldn't be any easier than, we always say power, video, and control, but now you're throwing audio in there and you're throwing Panopto in there all through one cable. It's kind of crazy what you guys at Epiphan are doing and making things easy for educators. Now, another cool feature about the EC20 is that it has the native fleet management built in. Can you kind of talk about what fleet management is?
Absolutely. So when I was talking about the Pearl devices, we were touching on that, having multiple devices of one space, one interface, and you can see all your devices in your fleet. The EC20 is compatible with that as well. And so what that means is that if you already have an existing Pearls in your environment, you can have your EC20s side by side with them. Or if you're just EC20s in your environment, you can see all your cameras in one space. So it allows the camera to work within the fleet management system that a lot of our clients already love. It pairs in the same way, and you can see your video and everything there. You can log into it remotely, change settings, see everything in one place. And so it just makes the management of these things just so much easier. And I should mention that these features that we're talking about, we're really hoping early next month, early May. That's when these are going to be 100% out there right now, and then you'll be able to use these. So hopefully, by the time you buy the camera, it's going to have that firmware ready to go, and you can just go ahead and start using it as all described here.
That is fantastic. Now, I want to just throw one little quick plug because we did have you on a Videoguys show not too long ago, and you did demo a little bit about fleet management. Again, unfortunately, we don't have enough time to play that right now, but if you want to head on over to the Videoguys YouTube channel, you can check out that video where Ryan and I discussed all things about the EC20. Ryan, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. As always, whenever we have a guest on the show, I like to give them the final word. If there's anything that you'd like to say to our viewers, any upcoming announcements, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at our devices, we have some exciting Panopto-related updates coming out for Pearl. We have greater sync for VOD from Pearl. That means that if when uploads go to Panopto, they'll be at a sub-second sync now with the newest firmware. And then, of course, we have the EC20. We also have some very exciting Epiphan Cloud updates coming up. Some changes to how you control users. You can add more permissions and also be able to choose who sees what device on a single team. So we're really just implementing the customer feedback that we've got. We've always been a company that does that. We listen to the people who are using our devices, and we want to make capture, lecture capture, recording, streaming just so much easier and more automated for folks out there that use our devices. And we listen to what they're saying, and we hope that everyone enjoys those new features. What we've done, a company has done 2 to 3 updates a year, and we stick to that. So, yeah, thanks. I really appreciate your time today.
All right, thank you so much, Brian. Thank you to everybody watching. Stay tuned for more content coming up next. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you to Ryan for joining us to talk about the Epiphan Pearl systems and the new and exciting news about that EC20. Very cool stuff to see in the very near future for Epiphan with their Pearls and with the EC20. I saw a couple more great questions come in while that segment was going on. One of them asked if we had Atomos joining us on the show. Unfortunately, they will not be joining us for this event. However, one of our sponsors, Videoguys, did a show with John from Atomos not too long ago talking about their new line of Ninja products as well as the brand new Shogun AV19. So you can definitely check that out to get more information if you head on over to Videoguys' YouTube channel. It was only a couple weeks ago, right before NAB. So you can get more information on that. I saw some of you guys talking about SRT and you were able to answer the questions. Awesome on you guys in the chat for answering questions as well. Another thing that you can do when it comes to syncing audio is there's a couple different things that you can do, and this is going to be across multiple platforms actually. Most switching platforms will have some kind of audio delay to match your audio to your video. Typically, especially when you are looking at like NDI, if you're using NDI HX or Dante AV8, it will inherently add like 1 to 2 frames of latency for your video. So production systems that are NDI compatible will oftentimes give you the ability to delay your audio to match the video and have it synced. The other thing that you can do is on a lot of, whether you're looking at camcorders or DSLRs or maybe even some PTZ cameras, and especially high-end PTZ cameras, you can actually just plug your audio source directly into one of your video feeds. That will sync your audio, and then you just bring it in synced from the camera. So that's another way that you can get audio synced with your video. There's other ways to do things like that as well. If you have any questions, absolutely, you can feel free to reach out to us via phone. So anyway, the next segment that we're going to be talking about is I actually did an interview with Cameron Boyce from BirdDog talking about their whole range of PTZ cameras. And then we actually even talked about a case study where one of their box cameras was used in a surgery. So it's pretty cool stuff to see these things in action. We're going to play that interview for you now. Thanks. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another segment of eduStreamTV, where we're talking about using live streaming equipment in educational spaces. I am super excited to be talking about BirdDog's PTZ cameras, fixed frame cameras, and all of that good stuff. And we invited Cameron Boyce from BirdDog to join us today. Cameron, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here, even if it's remotely this time.
Oh yeah, we're used to having you in the studio, but we will take Cameron whenever we can get him. So today, Cameron, we're going to be talking about all of the different PTZ cameras, fixed frame cameras, and solutions that BirdDog has for the educational markets. And you really do have a solution for every budget, every size, every studio, not just even studios, but classrooms, sporting events. BirdDog has a solution for everything. So let's kind of briefly walk through the entire range of BirdDog cameras for education.
Absolutely. So starting in the classroom kind of setting, we have our Max, X1 series, and Mach-E Live cameras. These are nice compact PTZs and box cameras that are going to give you high quality video with a nice ease of use and also a smaller form factor for those classroom settings. Those are rooms where we don't want something too large and distracting. We want something that fits in for a teaching environment that is maybe a little more interactive and kind of can blend into the back. If we go up to the next level with lecture halls, these are more, thought out and planned presentations. This is something where maybe we want that production quality to come up to the next level. And for that, we have the X4 series, the X5 Ultra, and the Mach-E Ultra. These bring us up to that 4K 60 level, as well as other workflows like SDI out the back. We have a little more flexibility and feature set here for that higher level production. And then on the high end, if we are doing, sports or higher broadcast quality productions for class or for, extracurriculars, we have the XL Ultra and our O4. The O4, this opens us up to outdoor environments. And then the XL is that top of the line, really high quality PTZ with unmatched quality.
I couldn't agree more. Cameron, I am going to go through these again, and I want to just highlight some of my favorite features on some of these cameras, starting off with the essential. And I think you said that right. These cameras are great to put into the classroom, specifically something like the BirdDog Max, which has the widest field of view. You can put this in the back of the classroom, and even if it's a super small classroom, you know that everything is going to be visible in frame. Stepping up to the X1, series of PTZ cameras. You have the X1, the X1 30X, and you have the X1 Ultra. These are great PTZ cameras. X1 with a 20X zoom, X1 30X with a 30X zoom, and the X1 Ultra stepping into 4K workflows. And then, of course, you have the Mach-E Live, which is this little guy right here, which is a very portable, small, battery-powered, Wi-Fi connectable box camera that can be placed anywhere to immediately enhance, even something as simple as a Zoom call or something like that.
It's nice you mentioned Zoom calls with the Mach-E Live. The Mach-E Live is my personal camera that I use. That's what I'm using for this call right now. You are getting 4K 30 video. You're getting a high quality image all out of a camera that is smaller than a beer can or soda can. So a really, really small form factor and a really, really high quality video for that.
No, I couldn't agree more. Your video is coming in super crystal clear. We are using Zoom right now, and I couldn't ask for a better video feed from a guest. Once you step up to the X4 and the X5, that's when you really have those more advanced 4K workflows. You have a little bit larger image sensors, do a little bit better in low light capabilities, and you also start to introduce the 3G and SDI capabilities. So, you know, the X1 series, they have a lot HDMI, USB, and NDI capabilities. But if you are in an SDI environment, that's when you can start to, you know, work up to those lecture halls. If you need to run longer cable runs and you still want to use baseband, going with an X4 or an X5 gives you that SDI capability. And then you hit the nail with the hammer on the premium production qualities. I think you almost undersold yourself in terms of that XL. The largest image sensor in a traditional PTZ camera. I think we need to talk about that a little bit. It really is a broadcast PTZ camera, and we didn't even talk about one of the standout features with it being a dual lens camera. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So, like you said, it does have the largest sensor we've seen in a traditional PTZ, which is that 4/3 sensor. So you're getting really great low light performance as well as that cinematic, shallow depth of field. So having that larger sensor in that main lens is a very big deal for us. And then, as you mentioned, we do have a secondary camera in the base of the XL Ultra. That is a full wide angle lens with a 1/1.8 inch sensor. So still really good low light performance. And that camera is not only its own output, but also is going to assist in AI auto tracking, which we'll touch on a little bit more in a second.
We will touch on that. And the last thing that I want to point out is, you know, when we're going into an educational environment, we want teachers to focus on teaching. We want to make the live streaming or recording of their lectures the easiest part of the whole production. And I want to just point out that a lot of the Bird Dog PTZ cameras have a little e-ink display on the side of it. And that makes it super easy to get into the camera's web GUI because once you connect it to your network, it shows you the IP address of the camera right there on the side. It makes it really easy to get into that web GUI, like I said, to be able to fine tune your color, your exposure, your focus, and all of your resolutions and frame rates. All of that can easily be controlled once you get into that web GUI. So Bird Dog really taking it to the next level. And that's available on all throughout the PTZ range, from the Max all the way up to the XL Ultra.
Yeah, absolutely. That e-ink display is something we've really kind of put on our brand on. We think it really helps the end user in terms of the installation side of things, as well as just ease of use during the time of operation. So having access to your IP at all times, your frame rate, your resolution, all of that information, even when that camera is off of power, you still have that information available. We think that is extremely helpful for all kind of different scenarios.
I couldn't agree more. Now, we were talking about auto tracking a little bit with the XL. Now, all of the PTZ cameras have auto tracking and the AI powered presenter lock. Can you talk about the auto tracking that is available across the entire PTZ range?
Absolutely. So, like you said, all of our PTZs do come with AI auto tracking built in directly to the hardware. We like having it in the hardware because you're getting consistent for performance, you're getting really high quality auto tracking, and it's always updatable from our end. So, we can always add improvements and different features throughout the product's lifespan. With AI powered presenter tracking, you can lock on to any subject of your choosing, whether this is a teacher at the podium or if there is a student giving a presentation, we can always be locked on to them and making sure that nothing, changes in terms of our tracking. If someone else crosses screen, we're going to stay locked on to the subject we selected. You'll see there we have zone control as well. If we want to put borders onto the presentation space so that we don't, go drifting too far or follow someone farther than we'd like, you can really lock in where you want it. This is really helpful as well if we are on a stage at any time, if we have a speaker leaving stage and another speaker coming up, we can make sure that we do not follow that person backstage and we wait for the second person to come on stage. Consistent
That
framing, we're going to make sure we are locked on wherever we like to be. If you want that framing to be, chest up, waist up, or full body, you can set that as well. And then we have the ability to turn on auto zoom to assist with that if someone's moving front to back or back to front.
That is fantastic. We said on the last slide too that BirdDog really just makes it easy for teachers to focus on teaching. So again, just being able to hit one button to be able to turn on that presenter lock mode, and then the teacher doesn't have to worry about, oh, is the camera going to get me in frame? Is the camera going to follow the student as they walk from the front of the classroom? That is a lot of great things. And this is all included in the PTZ, like you said, it's run on the PTZ. You don't have to pay anything extra to get these presenter lock features. So that is great on BirdDog. Now, all of these cameras really work well in a educational environment. Can you tell us some of the other features that might be prominent in an educational environment?
Absolutely. So like we touched on, that AI auto tracking is great, but there are certain, spaces where maybe we're in, low light environments. We have cameras that do that as well. If we're in small spaces, maybe a really tiny classroom or, a different, studio space, we have cameras with wide 90-degree angle lenses. If we have things like sports that are outdoors and we want to, have something that can handle all types of weather, we have our outdoor camera, the O4. So we really have cameras that can handle every space, zoom length, framing, field of view that you can imagine, and something for every price point as well. We have cameras on the really, really affordable option. And then also, if you want to bring that production level to the top tier, we have cameras at the super professional broadcast level as well.
One thing that we have noticed too is a lot of studios or just educational environments in general will maybe get one of the higher end PTZ cameras and then get one of the more budget friendly or two of the more budget friendly cameras. And I think it's also worth noting that because you have this consistency of color and exposure and all of that across the range, you can really mix and match the cameras. To fit whatever, again, budget you have in mind or scale that you have in mind too, right?
Absolutely. Mixing and matching is something we're very happy to accommodate. We've really made a lot of strides to make sure that image is consistent from X1 all the way to XL from a color perspective. And we're always constantly making improvements to that side of things. So making sure if you are using, our top of the line camera, but also have environments where you're using more intro level and those kind of small form factor cameras, that you're not missing out on the bird dog image quality that you enjoy.
Absolutely. And talking about being able to mix and match some of the cameras, whether it's a fixed frame camera or a PTC camera, um, there is this case study from Agora where this is a educational environment where there was a surgery that was done and it was broadcast live to a separate room where other students could watch the operation. Can you tell us a little bit about this case study and the cameras that they used?
Absolutely. So going into this, like you said, there was a surgery occurring in a actual surgical suite, and this was being broadcast to a classroom with students trying to learn and watch the surgery take place. Now, there's a few challenges with that in terms of latency, quality. We are in different workspaces, and making sure those are equal is not always something that we see. So, we knew what we had to tackle, and we wanted to make this as not only clean and high quality as possible, but also as use case friendly for those doctors and teachers on hand.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what the solution was? I know in this environment, in this case study, they ended up deciding to use an X1 Ultra paired with a couple of the Mach-E Lives. Can you tell us how those cameras were able to work together to be able to produce this event for them?
Absolutely. So, like you said, we were using X1 Ultras and Mach-E Lives. These cameras both have that 4K quality, so we're getting really high quality video from one end to the other. With our version of NDI HX, as well as other use cases, as other workflows, sorry, you are getting really, really low latency. As you can see on the image on screen, you also can use these cameras wirelessly. So we were able to place these in certain spots that might, not accommodate wiring. With the X1 Ultra, We also have that AI tracking. So surgeons who are trying to assist in the teaching process on their side can do so safely without having to interrupt the surgery that they are actually performing or worry about keeping themselves in frame. That tracking is going to lock on to whoever it needs to and make sure that they can go about their job in a professional manner.
I think that's great. And just again, I'm going to ask Adam to pull us up here again. Another thing to point out is that the Maki Live, again, not only is it wireless, so you can get your video from the camera to your production system or Zoom or whatever wirelessly, but it's extremely compact. So it doesn't interfere with the doctors that were giving this surgery. And as you can see, it's a very small thing that was just clamped onto, that actually looks like a tray there. It's super lightweight, super compact, and battery powered, and you still get that high quality utilizing NDI-HX3 to be able to get 4K 30p video out of that. One of the other things, and I'm not sure if they used it in the case study, but one of the other really cool features with the Maki Live is that you actually have some hand gestures. So you don't even have to go up to the camera to be able to control things like zoom. So that's another feature that is great on the Maki Live cameras. Cameron, all of these cameras can be used in educational environments, everything from classrooms to surgeries to sporting events to theatrical events and everything in between. If people want to learn more about BirdDog, not only your case studies, which you do have plenty of on your website, but just about BirdDog PTZ cameras and fixed frame cameras and BirdDog in general, where can they learn more information?
Absolutely. We have a ton of great information available on our website, which is birddog.tv. We also have great videos explaining some breakdowns on our YouTube channel, which is BirdDog. If you have any other questions, my information is readily available online. I'm happy to answer any technical questions, and when we have a great sales team as well. And then reach out to Broadfield, and they have a great team over there.
All right, great. Cameron, as always, whenever I have a guest on the show, I like to give them the final word. Any parting words that you would like to say to our audience?
Always happy to be on the show and talking new bird dog gear as someone who spent a lot of time in the education space. Making sure that we get that high quality video for everyone there is really important, and making sure that everyone feels taken care of on that side. So happy to be here and happy to be talking on this subject.
All right. Thank you so much, Cameron, for joining us. Everybody watching online, please stay tuned for more great content coming up. It's always great to have Cameron Boyce join us for a show to talk about BirdDog PTZ cameras. I saw a couple questions come in, one of them asking about 3D in PTZ cameras. Typically, that is going to be something that is applied to the higher end PTZ cameras on the market. The good news about that is these broadcast PTZ cameras over the past couple of years really have started to come down in price. I mean, 5 years ago, you could easily be spending 10, 15, maybe even $20,000 per PTZ camera. But there are some PTZ cameras on the market, such as that BirdDog XL, which is like $6,000 or $7,000. So it is still definitely an investment, but there are some more budget-friendly PTZ cameras that have 3D support in them for your virtual tracking and things like that. Another thing is that, yeah, there are definitely plenty of people that are using Zoom and PTZ cameras directly. A lot of the times, a PTZ camera will have a direct USB output, whether it's USB-C or USB-A. You plug that into your computer or laptop, and it will instantly come up as a webcam. And with that Zoom integration, I know that there is some PTZ functionality that can be transmitted over that USB cable as well. So that is available in a lot of different PTZ cameras, not just BirdDog, but it is a feature that is available in BirdDog's PTZ cameras. Our last segment for today is an interview that Jim Bask did with John Henkel from Netgear, talking about two case studies, completely different use cases for these network switches, but at the end of the day is still the foundation for their AV over IP workflows. So we're going to play that interview for you now.
Hey, this is Jim. I'm back here with you with eduStreamTV. And on this segment, I'm really excited to talk to John Henkel from Netgear AV about some of the great, interesting case studies where Netgear AV switches have been deployed in an AV over IP network in a school environment to really help be the backbone of their broadcast and AV production systems. John, thank you for joining us on eduStreamTV.
Happy to be here again, Jim. Good to see you.
It is always a pleasure to have you. For our audience who doesn't know where you're coming in from, can you give us a brief introduction of yourself and what Netgear AV does to support the backbone of some of these installations?
Yeah, sure. So I handle the marketing for Netgear's AV division. Been there for coming up on 7 years, I guess, October. So in Netgear, when they started focusing on AV, they started realizing those switches are being used in all these environments. And I was part of the team that we brought on to start focusing on AV. So we've been around AV for 10 years. We're celebrating 10 years in AV this year.
And it's amazing. And Netgear has really done a great job of optimizing all of their switches for AV over IP networks. We recently had a great segment with Gus talking about all the great products in the Netgear AV line and how those switches can be deployed to be the backbone of any production. I wanted to do this quick segment with John to talk about two specific case studies to give you an illustrative look about how these are being used in schools. John, can you introduce the two studies we're talking about today?
Yeah, and we got tons of these, of course. Not all of them are published, but there's a couple that we did not that long ago. One for a UK research university, medical research university. We've got several of those actually, called Cardiff. And you can imagine what they do in a training university, but they have to simulate the real environment of an operating room. So everything has to be spot on as far as timing and all that stuff. So you'll see some of the details there. I won't read the slide, of course, to you. And then the second one is in the Netherlands. So some Dutch secondary schools. This is really cool because they wanted to link these schools together to create a virtual campus. So they kind of got together and said, how can we make this better? Because some students in one class and in one facility need to link up to other ones, and they can share resources, share teachers, share resources that way. And it's a really cool idea, I think, overall.
And we're going to get into how the AV network really supported these two very different applications. You have a medical simulation facility, and you have, on the other hand, a group of rural schools looking to get into that production world. So, John, let's start by talking about how these two settings are very different, but what they have in common.
Yeah, it's clear. And you know, we talk about AV over IP. We've been talking about it for 10 or more years in general, like probably 15 years, really. But really comes down to the use and application, the need for AV over IP. So number one, zero latency. The Cardiff on the medical facility, of course, needs zero latency. And I think in schools as well, you want to have the reactions be real time. So you can't have that interruption. You have to have it real time, but bottom line is. So I think they both needed that. High quality video and audio, also number one. We know for a Zoom call or even for a webinar like this, okay, a couple of dropouts or hiccups here and there that might happen. But if you want to maintain that, like you're in the same classroom experience, you have to have no latency, no dropouts, and make sure everything's configured perfectly for you.
Sure.
And then you got to make sure that that infrastructure is built for AV. And that's a key part of this.
Absolutely. And I thought about not showing this next slide because when we talk to educators, there's a lot of jealousy when we talk about the budget and the scale that Cardiff University was talking about. This was a massive, massive campus investment that they put into their network, huh?
Yeah, and I know this isn't necessarily real for everybody else, exactly. It's like in marketing, you know, we try to promote we have 400 endpoints, whatever, but we know the day in, day out is like 10 or 20 endpoints, very different. But it shows you, I think, for us as Netgear here, it shows you what we can do, what's possible. So if you're thinking about campus-wide, we can do that. If you want to do one training facility, one classroom or two, we can do that as well. I think that's the real point here.
Absolutely. And the Cardiff facility really sounds like it was demanding from a technical standpoint. What were some of the network requirements and what were some of the challenges that they ran into?
Yeah, I think, and you can see them all listed here, of course. You've got to make sure that the network drops are there in the right place, and that isn't always the case, and they're moving the furniture around and reconfiguring things appropriately, and that happens in any kind of classroom for that matter. So you've got to really have some thought ahead of time as to where all of this network configuration is placed in the room. I think that's critical for this. By the way, the integrator GVAV you see there is the integrator used for
Yep.
this installation, and they were huge. So they knew to take a moment and set up things ahead of time and make sure that we actually think this through. Because once you put it in there, then you're kind of done for the most part. So you got to make sure that everything is thought about ahead of time, really, and you look at the application.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things we talk about all the time, whether you're looking at a large scale investment like one at Cardiff University, or even a smallest budgeted project that a lot of our educators are running into. Working with good partners along the way really helps make the entire project a success. Bringing
Right.
in a certified and trained system integrator, someone who has gone through the Netgear Academy and has the understanding of all these products and how they work together. And those Netgear Academy classes are also available to your IT departments and to people in your school so they can become familiar with how this backbone is all being worked together and how they can build a successful infrastructure.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought the academy up. I was going to make sure to mention that, but you beat me to it. Speaking to an education audience, of course, the academy is super important. And Gus just got an internal award, by the way. We had a little internal hands-on. He got a huge award within Netgear because he really has brought the education to the forefront, including other manufacturers training and low-level networking concepts, all the way up to deep dive network switching stuff. So it's a huge resource, and that's all free too. For sure.
Absolutely. And it's not the resources available to the system integrators, to the educators, but it's also there available to your students as well. So when you're involving the students into learning about AV production and how to set up the network and how to figure out the deployments, these tools are all available to help build your curriculum and the technology.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know what your background is, Jim, but I came from the AV world of my high school, of course, where I started too. So
Sure.
This is the way to find a career. Absolutely.
Perfect. So now, John, the big question, and the reason we invited you onto the show is to tell us about how Netgear AV specific features actually simplified this deployment at Cardiff University.
Yeah, and people may not realize just what that means. And we get the question all the time, like what makes an AV switch or what makes Netgear switches so important? We use a profile-based approach. So when you're using, let's say in this case, it was Visionaries, we have all kinds of AV over IP partners, over 580 partners that we work with to make sure that the profile is correct. What that means is when you go to install this equipment, you select a profile and then you select the ports you want to have using that profile, and you hit one button and we complete the configuration for you automatically. So these are preloaded, they're certified by their manufacturers so that when you do it on one switch or 10 or 100 switches, it's going to be consistent across that entire network. So that's done in a fraction of the time. You think of the other way of having to log into each switch and set one menu to one thing, set a different menu to something. You may have, a 10-page document to configure these switches with. Well, you don't have to worry about that anymore. We've done that homework for you. We partner with all these different manufacturers, virtually every kind of AV over IP or broadcast infrastructure, whatever you have, we have a profile for that, whether it's audio, video, the comms, the headset communications, things like that. We've done that hard work for you so we can configure that in nothing, in no time.
And that partnership has really made Netgear AV our #1 tech support solution. Anytime we run into an end user that is experiencing issues with their AV over IP network, the solution is try Netgear AV. Setting up the switches are optimized to work properly, very easy to set up and use. And I know, as our audience knows very well, you can work with a system integrator, a certified installer to get up and running. But at the end of the day, the schools have to rely on their own personnel and their own resources. These are the end users that are using these switches day in and day out. And Cardiff University's staff has managed to adapt to managing these systems themselves, right?
Yeah, look at the quote right there that makes them more self-sufficient. I think most people want that to happen that way. You don't want to have to call somebody every time you walk into a room and something isn't working. You want to be able to just handle it yourself and figure it out. Or, of course, walk in and have no issues. It's even better.
Absolutely. Now, again, Cardiff University is a great case study where this medical application is a huge deployment with a huge budget, a top priority for that school that we're looking at. Now we're going to shift gears and talk about this case study from the Netherlands, where you have a network of rural schools implementing AV over IP in a very different way to address some different. We talked about the similarities before. Now let's talk about some of the unique challenges that the Netherlands was able to run into and resolve with this technology.
Yeah, like I said, I love this example. I was reading up on this before the session here, and it's a really great example of thinking out of the box to say, how can we bring these people together? We all know through COVID that things changed. It's just for us at work, not to mention classrooms, of course. And this is, I think, kind of a holdover from that, really, where we can connect these classrooms now. The technologies have advanced enough that we're all used to video conferencing, but it's even more important because you want to make sure, again, this stuff is low latency. So you got to pick the right AV over IP compression with lower latency, still high quality. And we can handle all that stuff. It doesn't matter. And of course, again, high quality audio. There were things during the pandemic where they had live concerts being done from 3 different locations around the world, and they're all in sync. So this technology exists. And for them to go in and for a school to take this on, I think they chose the right vendor. Of course, I work for Netgear, but still, we have the people who can help figure this out, figure out what equipment's needed for that, and then also implement it and make sure it works perfect.
Absolutely. They were driven by the equity issue, not by the technology. They really needed to make sure that they were able to provide access to all this great education to all their students, regardless of where they might be. In looking at that, all of these installs always start with a challenge. In this case, it was where standard video conferencing fell short. What did the schools need, and how did Netgear help solve some of those issues?
Well, I think we go back to that delay and latency, things like that, where we're used to it for a video conference. But if, again, for a classroom where just the multiple classrooms, the virtual classrooms in the Netherlands, or even just the Cardiff University medical school, you can't have those kind of delays. So you have to really go with an AV over IP network that's built to have that zero latency, no delay. Zoom, Teams are great, use them every day, Google Meet, whatever, but it's not going to work for when you need that real-time connection. And that's what it should be. It shouldn't get in the way of the messaging and the connection you're trying to have with those classrooms.
Absolutely. I'm sure our audience is very well aware of how that real-time engagement helps promote the study and the education and even the retention of the materials that they're trying to present. Now I'd like to talk about the practical outcome for the students in the Netherlands who are now on that virtual campus where it's up and running.
And it says right there, right? Access, engagement, efficiency, and scale. So the thing that people don't think about, I'll take the last point first, really, is that as you add a new school, a new classroom, this stuff, anything over IP scales really easily. You add a new switch, you add more ports, you plug more endpoints in, and it scales. You don't have to buy a whole new network switch or replace everything that's already in there. You can just keep adding on to that. I think that's a key point. So as they need to be if they need to flex to accommodate different enrollment periods, different campuses, different classrooms, they can add and subtract as they need to. And that's been very, very efficient kind of from a cost perspective, as well as just empowering, I think, for the university.
And that's one of the recurring themes that has come up throughout the week is the ability to create a production system and to build that overhead capability where you can expand over time. And the AV networks really do give you a lot of flexibility through that to let you really build. So, John, if we look at these two these two case studies that we talked about, if you had to distill one lesson from both of these, deployments for integrators or AV managers, the people who are tuned in and watching us today, what would that lesson be? This
is it right there. It should be all uppercase, really, but bold is pretty good. And we're talking about this in every kind of vertical from here on out. The network is the most important part of that foundation. So don't think, oh, we already have a network, we can just add some things to it. Let's think about the size of that network and what you already have built in, who's managing that network, because often nowadays, I know the AV teams are part of the IT department at most universities. So they may not know AV as well as you do being an AV person, or if you're the IT person, great. You may not be aware of all the good things that a company like Netgear has to offer. So check it out, but make sure that you think about the network first. That's number one.
Absolutely. We use words like infrastructure or backbone. It is really the core of what is the AV over IP network. You want to make sure that you have a switch like a Netgear AV switch that is configurable, expandable, and flexible to handle all of your production needs. When I first hosted eduStreamTV, almost every AV over IP solution we talked about was NDI technology. This week, we're talking about NDI, Dante and Dante AV, ST2110, IPMX. All of these different formats can all be easily configured with Netgear AV, right?
Yeah, and it's good to point out, Jim, those don't all play well together on the network normally.
Absolutely not.
So doing this on your own,
Yes.
I wouldn't advise that for sure.
Yeah.
I used to have hair until I started configuring these networks. It's if you've done a little bit, you understand configuring this stuff is not easy. We have done the homework. We have profiles again for all this kind of stuff. So it's just, and you can find this stuff out online. Plenty of videos about how we do it.
And definitely, if you're tuned in all week, you'll see that we're being joined not only by our great manufacturing partners like Netgear AV, but also our system integrators throughout the country who have firsthand experience in the real world installing these systems and handling all of these solutions like the case studies we're bringing you this week. John, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Jim. Thanks so much for all you do for the vertical too. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay tuned.
Thanks so much to John for joining us to talk about those two case studies. I will just give everybody a reminder, I had a very lengthy conversation with Gus from Netgear as well, talking about the Netgear Academy. That was too long to play during this show. What we're going to do is on Thursday, when all of this gets uploaded to our other channels, we will be putting that segment in there as well. So it'll be a more deep dive into like workflow examples and stuff like that. So if you want more Netgear, wait until the end of the event and we will give you some more Netgear. That is the majority of the things that we wanted to show today. Just a reminder of the next 2 days outline. We're going to be doing a conversation with QuickLink tomorrow and their production systems, PTZ Optics talking about their PTZ cameras, NPI, a local installer who just did a great install in a school recently. Kiloview talking about, again, their P3 Mini, and their other encoder and decoder solutions. On Thursday, we're going to be getting a demo from Telestream on the Wirecast software. David Mitchick from 1210 Production Company talking about the Texas High School. We're going to be doing an interview with Andrew Roberts from the Lumix Ambassador Education Program, and then ending off our show with Jeremy Morris from VizRT. Again, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, make sure to head on over to eduStreamTV.com to see to get your chance in engaging in our polls in our chat, which was going off a lot today. I want to say thank you to everybody who is watching on Crowdcast. We saw that a lot of you were involved in our polls, in our chat. Absolutely feel free as the event continues to go on to ask more questions. We're here to answer them. We're going to play a couple case studies for you, and then that is it for today. Thank you for joining. We'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern.
Hi, I'm Dan with Epiphan Video. We design and manufacture award-winning devices for video capture, recording, and streaming. We're best known for our Pearl product lineup that includes Pearl Nano, Pearl Mini, Pearl 2, and Pearl Nexus. With Pearl, you can capture video from any source, record multiple sources simultaneously, enhance your video with layouts, graphics, and switching, and stream your sources and programs to any destination. Pearl devices are perfectly suited for education settings, which is why they're being used in over 500 academic institutions worldwide. Common applications include lecture capture, auditoriums, studios, and live events. Pearls can be operated with intuitive controls, or fully automated with popular content management systems like Panopto, Kaltura, Yuja, and OpenCast. If there's anything we can help you with, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can contact us through our website at epiphan.com.
The University of Buffalo's classroom technology standard I will put up against anyone else's because it is tried and true. It is based on a standard that we have developed over the course of the last 15 years, and it works.
Classroom capture has really become ubiquitous on campus. It's in all of our central classrooms now. One of the reasons lecture capture is important is because we have a lot of students on campus who need accommodations for one reason or another. They need recordings, or they need captions, or they need to be able to re-listen and review content.
Our pain point with using PC capture is that that is a PC that has to be managed by a staff person.
So what pushed us to go with Pearl Nexus is we needed a more efficient way to manage all of the devices. Since we've grown this service to well over 150 classrooms, managing all of those devices, re-imaging those devices every year, and then reconfiguring, that takes up a lot of time.
My goal is to reduce our technology stack to as few devices as possible. With Pearl Nexus, we're able to eliminate 4 to 5 additional devices and replace them all with one.
Deploying Pearl was way easier than any capture appliance that we've probably deployed in the past. We used to have to use 3 people over a course of handing it over from one person to the next to the next. With Pearl Nexus, I put rack ears on the thing, I registered the thing on the network, we got it into Epiphan Cloud, and I got to tell my capture team that it was installed. It was a huge difference.
So when we look at our help desk, we have not got any tickets yet for our Pearl Nexus devices.
I mean, that's a difference, you know? Everything has gone off without a hitch. We haven't missed a single recording, and now we have more time to innovate and take on new projects. We're always looking to do the new and exciting thing.
We're looking to even use AI in the classroom support systems, which is why we're excited about the new Epiphan camera. We can use it in the future to capture data from the room. How many people are in the room? Are they in the right room for the purpose of what's going on in the room? So we see the ability to utilize what's captured by Nexus, what's captured by the Epiphan camera, to go through that data and turn it into something useful, not just for instruction, but for administration. We're very excited about the future here at the University of Buffalo, and Epiphan is playing a critical role in that.
Introducing the next evolution of the Netgear M4350 series. Purpose-built for live production, broadcast, and mission-critical AV environments. Rugged, lockable Neutrik connections with modular interface cards and a new high-performance model with 16 100 gig ports. Both new models support SMPTE ST2110 for critical broadcast signal timing. Netgear M4350 series.